What is going on, everybody? Hello, hello, guys. Welcome in. Gonna let it all come in a couple minutes. Happy Sunday. Also, like looking for my glove. Got it. How are you guys doing? Yo, yo, yo. Real quick, just before we get started, guys, I'm gonna let you know. I was hanging out with my kids today. Took them to the beach before people even were going to arrive. And I'm tired, man. I'm like drained. Uh, like first and only time I've done anything like that all summer, and I just feel so tired. So if I seem a little off, that's about it. Just a little tired. I also just woke up from a nap, so don't mind me. But we're here and we're gonna do it. It's gonna be awesome. What is going on, guys? Hello, hello. All right, all right. Real quick, guys. You know what's up, right? ZBrush Summit is coming October 23rd through the 26th. It's going to be awesome. There's a sculpt off, you all know. Register, check it out. If you do want to participate, it is a free for all sculpt off, so make sure that you register uh, as soon as possible. If you don't want to compete, no big deal. Just come out, hang out with me or anybody else who's going to be doing it, because I'm going to be doing it as well. They will be announcing the theme probably a couple weeks before the actual summit, but that is also dependent on what Pixologic wants to do. So I'll keep you guys posted. As soon as I know the theme, you will too. Hydrate, yes. Hashtag fact. What is happening? So yeah, I got my Gatorade right here. But yeah, in California, it's like stupid hot. It's like 95 right now, and it's 5. It's ridiculous. But anyway, all right, I digress. So don't forget to do that. Also, too, if you are new to this channel, please, please, please don't forget to subscribe, like, follow, all that good stuff. My name is Ian, if you don't know, aka IR Sculpts for some of you who know, and I am a digital sculptor at Funko. I make toys for a living. And essentially, most of the stuff that I do, we also do 3D printing prototype. And we're going to go over all the things to look out for. Today specifically is going to be a little bit of a new approach because I'm going to be setting up a new workflow on how I want to approach moving forward with using ZBrush, scale, and 3D printing. So hopefully all of that stuff is going to be really good for you guys. I've been working on this workflow in secret for like about a week or two. Um, but I thought this should be the simplest way to like approach it. And I tried it out and it worked out really well. So I'm going to recreate it instead of just saying, here's the thing. So let's get into that. So first off, bloop, we'll go ahead and drop that sucker down. What's up, man? How you doing? Stickles is here. Winston's here. Nifty Cat is here. Ryan's here. Zintral's here. Hello. All right. So we are started to go. Let's do it. Let's do it. Okay. So first things first is we have our model. This is what we're going to be we're going to be prepping for 3D printing. There's no try. So, but before we do this, we're going to get some information to kind of help get us prepped in what we're going to be doing. What's going on, Skull Hat? What's up, dude? What's up, Maker JP? Welcome in, guys. Welcome in. All right. I also just realized you guys can't hear any of the music whatsoever. So let's change that. Odd. I think my settings got it readjusted. Is it this one? Sorry. Ooh, that's like blasting your ears. All right, hopefully that's good. What is up, Chris? What is up? Hannibal! Rajman, you're all here. Awesome, dude. Do or do not. Exactly. Okay, so my new approach. What am I talking about? What am I doing? So a lot of times I get the impression that scale is somewhat complicated in ZBrush, and I feel like there's a really good way to approach scale, and I want to cover that part first. So what we're going to do is we need some information, and the information that we need is my 3D printer's build area. Now you could do this, you can make a bunch of these essentially presets. What I'm going to be doing is making a specific ZBrush project for my ePax printer or my Ender 3. And so what I need to do is you could quickly look up, so I just typed into Google, ePax X1 build volume, and we get this number right here, 115 by 65 by 155. That's the information that we need, and that's what we're going to adjust the entire project to be. So then we can, when we're ready to take our parts and 3D print them, we can, instead of creating scale within that own project, we can just copy our entire project into our new project folder and go from there. This will hopefully all make sense in a minute. Okay, so let's go ahead and move this over here. And let's get a new sphere. Boop, boop. Doesn't really matter, actually. Let's switch. And let's grab a 3D cube, drag this out. Go ahead and hit T to edit mode and make Polymesh 3D, which is perfect. And now what we're going to do is we're going to basically scale this first to what we need it to be. Let's see here. What was that song? What was it about to go? La 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 la. Oh, never mind. Thought it was Snoop Dogg. No, no, no. No, no copyrighted music here. If you guys want to know what music I rock, I use Pretzel Rocks. And I just usually use the synthwave. It seems to be the most stream friendly. And I have YouTube safe mode on because YouTube is a little bit more strict, I think, when it comes to selections. So it just ensures that both Twitch and YouTube don't have any copyright hits. Hey, what's going on, Frank? Good to see you. How have I been? I'm good. I'm a little bit tired today. I took my kids to the beach in the morning before it got too crowded, and the sun just like I was out in the sun way longer than I have been in the last 2 years. I think that just kind of just drained me a little bit. Outside of that, I'm doing really good. How are you doing? Okay. So we have our scale. So 115 by 65. So what we're going to do first is we're going to go ahead and go up to Z plugin, and let's just bring that over here. So if you don't have Z plugin over here, just open it up, grab this little thing, and plop it off to the left here. And we're going to go into Scale Master. And now that I have my cube here, we're going to go ahead and we're going to set this up for what we need it to be. So I'm going to go ahead and hit Set Scene Scale. And this is going to give us our generic idea of what we're looking for. Now this is 2mm. That's default typically. So anytime that you bring in a default subtool, usually it'll be around 2mm when you set scene scale the first time. Now what we're going to do is we're going to basically just do a little bit of math and get this thing set up to the build volume that we want it to be. Now this is going to be a lot of prep, but I promise you, for me it makes things easier, so hopefully it makes it easier for you. But again, I have my build volume here for my printer, which is 115 by 65 by 155. And we're not going to be getting exact numbers, we're going to be getting approximates. We'll get it around there. So first things first is what we could do is we can just go ahead and, or actually, you know, we can't get approximates. I lied to you. Here's what we're going to do. Now that we have this, we're basically just going to go ahead, and there's this Scale Master over here. What we're going to do is this button right here. It says this R is lock slider for all axis. If you uncheck this, you actually can make adjustments individually. Right? Nope, sorry, it's this one right here. Wow, I am off today, guys. Do not mind me. I apologize. Let's go 65, 115, 155. Let's try that. Give me 1 second. Sorry. My brain is just all over the place. And resize subtool. Let's make sure this works out the way I want it to. Hey, what's going on, TL? Alright. Alright. Oh no, okay, I was right. Second guessing myself. There it is. Okay, let's start over so that my brain can keep up with my mouth. There we go. Okay, let's start over. Hey, how you guys doing? I'm a little tired today. Feeling low energy too? Yeah, I don't know. It's just me, guys. Okay. I told you I was off today. I'm so sorry, guys. Okay, here's what we're going to do. We're going to start this completely over because I don't want to lose people. Okay, so what we're doing, guys, is we are essentially, we are making a entire project specifically for our printer. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to reset this whole thing. I'm going to come in here. I'm going to go subtool. Let's just delete this cube right there. Perfect. I'm going to delete even my main tool. We're going to delete this whole tool right here. Great. Here's what we're going to do. I'm serious. Like I'm just going to go ahead and restart ZBrush because I am Kana, what's happening? How are you doing? This has been the roughest 11 minutes ever. Thank you guys for bearing with me. Hi guys, welcome to ZBrush. Let's do things. Okay, so let's try this again. We're gonna go here. We're gonna do the cube 3D. We're gonna grab this sucker. We're gonna hit T to go into edit mode, make polymesh 3D. Now life is good. All right. I haven't been able to catch any of your streams in forever. I know, I haven't caught any of your streams either. I feel terrible. Everybody, if you don't know who Kana is, she's an amazing, talented, stylized artist. Check her out. Click her. Click, click, click. All right. Yeah, as I should. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and make this build volume. So like I said at the start of this, before I completely even lost myself and how life is going, we need to get our build volume here, which is what we did. So now what we're going to do is we're going to go up to Z plugin, which I have here. We're going to go to scale master. And what we're going to do is we're going to turn off that lock sliders ratio. That lock slider ratio keeps everything in check, so X, Y, and Z does exactly the same thing, and that's not what we want. And what we do want is to get an approximate build size volume because that's what we're going to be working within. And what we're going to do is we're going to take the X, which doesn't really matter how you set this up as long as it works for you. I try to keep the tall side up. So what we're going to do is go 65 by 155 by 115. 55. Hello. It looks like a sci-fi HUD. Yeah, it does. So what's the plan today? Today we are going over the basics of, we're going to be going over the basics of prepping for 3D printing, and I'm showcasing a new workflow that I've been on, so yeah, so that's pretty much what we're working on. I'm just setting up a new project. So basically what I'm doing in a whole is setting up projects per printer so that when I need to prep for that printer, I have the build volume already inside as we do it. So if we come over to Scale Master, hit Set Scene Scale to get the initial size of our cube, that's 2 millimeters. I'm going to click that. And then I'm going to make my adjustments on the X, Y, and Z. So we're going to go 65 millimeters by, what is it? 115 by 155. And then we're going to go ahead and hit Resize Subtool. You're going to get this error more than likely. Ignore it. It's totally fine. There we go. And that will give us this guy right here. So now this is my build volume. So if I can measure across essentially, which we take our gizmo tool, hit Y to get the transpose tool, start dragging out from one side and hold shift and click to the other side, you'll see right up here at the very top, it actually says 64.9993 millimeters, which is about our build size that we want. So that is, and then we can go ahead and measure the rest here. So we'll take this, drag this down. So of course this is 115, and then this right here is, so we actually need to adjust that. I need to readjust that. So that is 155, 115. Resize that. There we go. I had it backwards. So that's going to come there. There we go. So if you have your build volume, then that's what you can work within, which is really, really good. 65, 15, and there we go. Awesome! That's right. Hey, that's my name right there. Shiny new Discord and shiny new hair. Yeah, my hair is actually just not down. Or not did. Done. Done did. Alright. You guys are catching a rare moment where I'm just like, not me. And if you have to readjust your build, like so here, I'm just dragging this back out. This is another thing you could do. You could just go ahead and, you know, kind of remeasure that out a little bit if you're a little bit under, or if you want to try to get it exact, which this will be just fine. I try to always go, like, I recommend going a little bit under, if nothing else, because it can't hurt. And we're just using this for a placeholder to basically keep everything within side. So let's measure that one more time. We got 152, 115, 165. Perfect. So that's the size of our build volume. That's what we're going to work in. So you can save that thing and use it every time you start? Yep, absolutely. So now that I have this, what we could do is you could do one of two things. You can either take this and save it as a ZTL, because if I were to save this as a ZTL, so let's come in here and then let's go to my desktop, for example, and I'll type this as epax x1 build volume, right? And if I were to go ahead and turn ZBrush off and then come back, you guys like how I do that? Essentially what you could do then is you could just come in here and say, oh, I need to print something. So I'm going to go to my main desktop. I'm going to load in the subtool. That's going to give me this guy right here. And then if I go to Z plugin, go to Scale Master, Set Scene Scale, 165 by 152 by 115, boom. Now I'm scaled exactly to my printer every single time. What combination of button do you move the mesh around? So I have a tablet, so I use right click a lot to kind of wiggle it around. Hold Alt to click and drag. Hold Alt, right click to move it around like this. Let go Alt, but holding right click will allow you to zoom in and out, and of course right click drag. Or you could just touch in a blank spot. But I typically, part of the right click army, I think he calls it. I don't know. I do everything. I do a little bit of everything. So, all right. So hopefully, all right, before we move on, did I lose anybody? Yes, you can use XP Pen for ZBrush. Actually, XP Pen was one of my first tablets I ever used. Both the screen and the regular version. Works just fine for ZBrush. Very affordable, very easy to do. You're good to go. I've only recently upgraded to a Cintiq because I find the workflow a little bit faster for what I do, and I'm allowed to have helps me have a lot more shortcuts. But outside of that, you don't need it. XP Pen works great. Any tablet, Huion, I think is how you say it, they work great as well. So yeah, all of it is good. Yay! Awesome. Okay, I want to make sure I didn't lose anybody with my really rough start. But We just basically built the build volume for our printer. And again, we could do the exact same thing. And I plan on giving these away in my Discord. So if you're not a part of my Discord, you can hop on there and join. And I'm going to be creating a channel soon that's going to be called Free Giveaways. And it'll be little things like this where you could just download the ZTLs and stuff. So you guys can have them, and then you can follow along when you rewatch this or do all that good stuff. So if you would like to be a part of my Discord, which is just a chill place, by the way, you guys can pop on over there. But I'm prepping a bunch of stuff to be giving away, including my UI, so that will be happening as well. So build volume is in. Now what we can do is we can load our Bokoblin statue and start getting this prepped for 3D print. Now this is a big undertaking. It's a huge model, and there's a lot of tiny pieces. So we have to keep in mind, what I want to do is keep in mind everything on how big or small something's going to be. But this is going to be a lot. So we're going to start with the basics, and then we're going to move down the line from there. Yep, use one for it. Nice. Perfect. Okay. What would the final scale for this one? Oh yeah, so that's actually what I want to figure out right now. I'm actually thinking I want to print a smaller version of this first, and then scale up from there. But we'll see. Life size. I would love a life size one, but I don't think that's quite possible. With my printer, it would take too long and too much material. Print your own rock farm. Exactly. So, okay, what we're going to do, we're going to try something on this one. So what the other thing I've been doing lately is, once everything is set in stone, no pun intended, what I do like to do is go up to the very top, open up all my folders, and I need to go through and make sure there's no dynamic settings turned on. Gonna go ahead and do that real quick. Because when you're working with 3D printing and getting stuff ready, if you have dynamic turned on and you don't know it, then the low res is gonna get finalized. And sometimes that can look really weird. How do I reset that position? Which position? Need one heck of a printer. Yeah, no joke. TL101, which position are you talking about? Are you talking about home for everything? Or are we talking about how I set this thing up? And I know YouTube lags a little bit behind, so I won't move on too fast. Just go through and make sure dynamic is not turned on. Up, right there. I'm gonna apply that. I use dynamic a lot, so if you use dynamic a lot too, then you might be familiar with this, where if things aren't set, then we need to readjust that. And remember too, we're working at, I might try to make a mini version of this, so we might do some cool little tricks. There's a lot of details, but ultimately, okay. Wow, that's everything. Nice. We're only at 70 million, no big deal. Alright, what we're going to do is create a new folder, and then we're going to call this the Bokoblin Talus 3D Print Prep folder. Jump in there, and now this will be Prep 01. So, going to go through a bunch of ZTLs at this point. Okay. Alright, now that we have all that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to just go ahead and start turning things off and start with what's in this folder. And what's in this folder is just this guy right here, which is pretty cool. Where's this guy? No, he's there too. Perfect. So I'm going to go ahead and actually merge him together. Now, what I will preface is that when you're working with high topology like I'm working with, it's best to save your subtools as often as possible in case of a crash, but also too, you want to work with one section at a time. You don't want to merge anything together that you don't want final too fast. So make sure that you uh, are certain about which things you're going to combine, especially before slicing. What I'm going to do is I'm going to take this folder here. I merged those together that I'm going to keep, and we'll call this the Talus. And I'm going to save as and call this O2. So O1 is my starting point, O2 will be my changes. The arrow points. Oh. Okay, maybe. So if I'm understanding you right, sorry, so if your like gizmo is set over here, you hold Alt and hit the reset button, and then hold the while you're holding Alt, tap this little kind of like a Google map icon. That will reset that. And if you hold Shift down, you'll actually be snapping every 5 degrees. Is that what you mean? Okay, let's turn this off. Let's turn this on. So as you can see here, okay, down at the bottom, there's that thing. You can see here, this is our bridges. What I'm going to be doing is merging all this together, and then I'm going to break apart what I don't want. So we'll merge this together, but it's all at its high point. Okay, cool. Awesome, TL. So now this is merged into one piece, but notice again, I'm not Dynamesh merging, I'm just combining it for now. And we're going to go ahead and delete these folders. So I'm just going to, here's the, ooh, there we go. Okay, I got a floaty piece right here. We don't need that piece anymore. There we go. This little guy. Look at this little guy. All right, let's merge him together. There we go. Okay, and we'll go ahead and delete that folder. All right, the rope and cloth brush, or brush, the rope and cloth right here. This will be a separate piece. We'll go ahead and merge this together. And then we'll go ahead and delete. So 3D print prep usually takes a bit of time. So don't rush this process at all. This is the process that you can spend a long time on. So hopefully as we go through this, it all makes sense as it's going through. Looking Gucci! Nice, Jeffrey. How you doing? Welcome in, man. Alright, let's go to the base. Let's turn that base on. Alright, now I'll tell you right now that I had this chest right here. So we're going to put that right back in there. There we go. And let's go ahead and merge that folder together. So you can see, again, I'm just taking everything that I had in folders and combining it so my subtools are as little as possible. Ooh, okay, great. Now here's something else too. Notice that this little piece right here did not get combined with the proper guy, so I'll kick that up. And then this is an extra club, which we don't need, so let's get rid of that. There we go. And let's merge that down. Get rid of the whole folder. And then for this one, let's move this up because this was part of the black Bokoblin. And for some reason, it did not come. I didn't have it in the right folder, so that's my fault. So let's merge that down. Hey, what's up, Heroes Bench? Love the sculpt, man. It's going to be an awesome 3D print. It really is, yeah. What printer do I have? So we're going to be prepping this for the Epax X1 3D printer. It's a resin printer. It's really small. It's the default sizes that most resin printers come in. And it's about 65 by 115 by 155 in total volume. Depending on how big I want this, which we'll figure out here in a second, that's going to greatly depend on how I break it up. So we have a preset that we went over, which is right here, that I'll explain a little bit more once I get this prepped. But now we're going to be going ahead and merge this together. Right now we're just kind of merging things together that need to get merged together before we continue to the main process. So if you, depending on how you choose to work within ZBrush, it's going to greatly affect the final product with how you actually want to break it up. So as we went over before, the different pieces that we liked and that we didn't like, we're going to be making sure that that stuff gets all sorted out. But there it is. So there's our main pieces. We have a total of 8 pieces to print, right? But we're going to probably break this up a little bit more too. I do want to make a mini version of this to give away. So more than likely, let's get the mini version figured out. Have you ever used a Huion display tablet for sculpting? If so, how did you like it? I didn't use the Huion display tablet, but I did use a Artist 13.6 XP pen, and it was good. I really liked it. I just needed something bigger, so I upgraded. But it was great. It was affordable, and I hear that Huion, is it Huion or Huion? I hear they work really well, about the same, if not better, than XP pen. I have no personal experience on them, but they seem to line up pretty well. No, I don't have a Photon Anycubic, not yet. And that's what I use. And how is the Nano? Or Nando, how is that? Okay. Now we can actually, let's figure out the scaling of this guy, okay? So what we're going to do, we're going to go ahead and save this one more time. And now we're going to figure out the scale and measure a few things. This is where we get to kind of play, and we get to keep in mind exactly what it is our printer is going to be doing. So I'm going to go ahead and merge visible. That's going to take everything that it sees, and it's going to merge it into one subtool. So we have this right here. I'm going to take this. I'm going to take this guy. I'm going to copy it. I'm going to go ahead and paste it into my scene scale area. Okay. And what I'll do now is, so I don't have too much going on, I'm going to delete the subtool I don't need. Coming in here, it is highlighted, so if we hit transpose, you can see where it's at. And now we can actually go to deformation and hit unify. And that will go ahead and pretty much help set it to where we have certain things. So you can see now it's slightly taller and obviously wider than my build area, but what I like about this is now I can come in and start measuring the small parts based on my current scene. So for example, we can zoom all the way in here, and let's isolate this section right here. How wide is this? How thick is this? So we're going to take our gizmo tool, hit Y, so that we have our transpose tool. I'm going to find one spot, hold shift, measure to the other, and that is about 1.7 millimeters. So that's tiny. Good budget drawing tablet. Yep, absolutely. Nice, Nando. I got a Photon Mono. They are good printers if that's what you're wanting to know. Nice. Yeah, I heard they're really good. There's also just they're bigger printers now. I need to upgrade the size of my printer. And that will happen eventually. So that part's pretty thin. And so this is where we need to start considering what gets merged together, how big something will be, etc. Ooh, I got a lot of... Whoa. Let's back this up for a second. Looks like I had some things masked off. Let's go back in history. I did. Okay. Now I'm working with a really big file. So, had a little bit of a warp right there. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at this rope real quick. Because I'm going to have to do some stuff with this rope. I'm going to have to merge together and get things going. I'm going to hide a bunch of this stuff. That's only 66 million, no big deal. The Mono SE is the same size as your Apex, you think. Oh, okay. Yeah, I need something a little bit bigger, personally. Okay, let's take our transpose tool. I'm gonna drag this out, hold shift, come in here. So this is really small. This is 0.02 millimeters. So that's what I mean when we want to kind of look at things that work versus don't work. That's too small. That's not even going to print. So we're going to have to figure out a decent scale. We're going to base it off of this guy here. Elgu Saturn or Mono X? I have no idea yet. Probably Saturn. Okay. Epax X. Alright, so let's go ahead and get rid of this guy right here. I'm going to go ahead and delete this one. So let's figure out scale, right? So what we're going to do is I'm actually going to now show you another way on how to get scale going within ZBrush that will be relatively consistent and also to kind of make sure that it's falling within line of what we want it to fall in line with. So if we want to just do an overall scale, what we need to do is create some sort of consistent measurement system. And for me, that's always the cube, which is why I typically have a cube as the starter subtool in my project. If you guys haven't noticed before, but if you save your ZTL file, it usually takes on the name of whatever your file is. So if you have your, like if you have a head as your first one, and then you have a body, and then you have arms, and then cloth, and armor, and then swords, etc., and then you save it and you say that it's, you know, Funky Kirby ZTL, that first subtool name changes to Funky Kirby. So you want to make sure that you have like a placeholder, which is usually a cube. Now the reason why I do the cube is because, again, it's a very simple shape to get a good measurement. So what we're going to do is I'm going to scale this scene to get the overall height of how big I want this. And then I can always come back to my Epax build area that will then show me if that part will fit when I need it to. So it's a good way to kind of check yourself. So what we're going to do is actually turn this guy on. I'm going to go ahead and set this over here. Okay. And I'm thinking what I want. I would like this to be... I think I would like this to be about 8 inches in height. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to duplicate this 8 times. And here's how you can do it consistently. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on here. I'm going to go ahead and hit this pen. This little pen right here, when you hit this, anytime I move the gizmo and then let go, it's going to snap that gizmo back to its original location. So it kind of pins that gizmo to that spot. The reason why I do that is because it's a really easy way to then use 1 on the keyboard to repeat an action. So what I'll do is I'll hold Control and I'll drag this out and I'll stack it right on top, let go, and that snaps back. Then I'm going to basically have about 8 cubes tall. So this is 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So now I have 8 cubes on top of each other. Now I'm going to clear that mask, and then I'm going to go ahead and take that pen, turn it off, hold Alt, reset the position. And now I'm going to go ahead, send this in the middle. I'm going to scale this to the size of the model. So this is the other way that you could set your model scale without worrying too much. So that right about there. And now I'm going to go ahead and turn on auto groups. So I'm going to go to polygroups, hit auto groups, which is going to go ahead and group each and every one of these. I'm going to select the one that I want and then go ahead and delete hidden on the rest. So geometry, modified topology, delete hidden. Correct, yeah. The cube will represent 1 inch or 25.4 millimeter. Absolutely. So now that I have that here, I'm going to go ahead and reset this back in its home position. That seems to be the best when you're scaling. We're going to go ahead and save real quick. That way we know that everything is fine. And then we're going to go to Z plugin, scale, set scene scale. Pick the millimeter option or the inch option, whichever you prefer. I prefer to always work in millimeters because most 3D printers work in millimeter and it's just good to stay consistent. So go ahead and hit millimeter. And now we're going to resize this to 25.4, which is 1 inch. So we're going to go ahead, come up to the slider option, go 25.4, 25.4, and 25.4. Now, if the R is selected, then doesn't matter. You can just do it to 1. If R is not selected, then you want to do it to all. And go ahead and hit resize subtool. And now it's going to resize everything. Again, you might get this error, resizing all subtools is based on selected dimensions. We'll create the XYZ values larger than 100. To resolve this model needs to be unified first. Say OK, so that's going to unify your model. That's a common error that pops up. Just hit OK. Let it do its thing, and it will start resizing everything. And again, we're working with 66 million polys, so this model's pretty dense. It's a hefty boy. So just let it do its thing. All right. Now that it's done, we can go back to Z plugin, set scene scale one more time to confirm that our dimensions are correct. And we have it right here at 25.4 millimeter cubed, which now this represents a real world thing. And what we can do is confirm that against our EPAX setup. So we could take this cube, copy it. First, let's save real quick. And go ahead and load. Let's go into my desktop EPAX build area so that it's right here. Go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and set scene scale on this guy so that I know it's there. I'm going to go ahead, transpose is turned on. I'm going to paste. And now I can see that this looks about accurate. And again, we can always measure if we need to. So we can take our gizmo by hitting W, hit Y on the keyboard, and then click a point, hold shift, drag to the other side. That's 25.3993. And we can compare that to this right here, which is 65 by 115. So we know now that this is a 1-inch cube and that it fits exactly in our pre-built ZTL at the very, very beginning. So this is a way that you can ensure that you're always fitting to your printer when you're going through and modifying your design to be 3D printed. And this is the workflow that I've been kind of like going back and forth, because you can have your slicer open, whatever you use, Chichu box, Prusa slicer, anything, doesn't really matter. You can have that open and like export and drop, but a lot of times that's just kind of like, ugh. But if you take the time and set something up right out the gate, then you can check with yourself within your own files and then you're good to go. Yes, a lot of math. Half of 3D printing or designing for 3D printing is engineering. But yeah, there's definitely a lot of math. But once you get this set, you can set it, and then you're good to go, and you don't have to ever worry about that again. And actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another, just because my OCD is kicking in. I'm going to go ahead and gonna just get rid of these extra lines. We don't need those lines. There we go. Perfect. Hey, what's up, Talden? All right. So again. And actually with this build volume, what we could do is we could actually take this, rename this as 1-inch cube. And now you always have a 1-inch cube with you at all times. Just save this out. And now you always have that 1-inch cube, which is perfect. So, but again, once you get this set up the way you want it, it's really easy after that. Okay. Now let's start prepping. So what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to hide everything and I'm going to focus on this, on where I want my keys to be. And real quick, I am curious how big this base is and how that's going to work in the printer as it is. So I'm going to copy this base, come over to my build area. I'm going to paste this base into my printer setting. And ideally, when I was making this grass, I was thinking if I printed it upside down, this grass would actually work pretty well. But that's going to be a bit problematic. So I may want to split this up into 2 different pieces. That way I can print it. I can pretty much print it like such. Or we get rid of the grass. It's fun for the render, but not for the sculpt. Grass is hard to print, guys, like hair. I know what I'm gonna do. Okay, we're gonna print with the grass, but we're gonna cut it without the grass first, then we'll put the grass back when we need to. So we're going to go ahead and delete that. Now I know how it fits in that scene. So let's start with the base. That way we can get cutting on some stuff. It could print fine at a 45, but these grass particles right here, they're tiny, right? Let's actually measure one of those. So this looks like it's about 0.5 millimeter. That's pretty small for one blade of grass, and I know they're all about the same thickness. So the grass will be the most problematic thing. Yeah, absolutely, I agree. It could print fine at a 45, but it could also look like just a mesh, like a mush of stuff, and not really be all that good. So we'll definitely, yeah, I did see your Ursula eyelashes. That was really good, man. So let's go ahead and actually kind of sort this a bit. Now we want to, this is 16 millimeter, or 16 million polys. So let's just split the grass for now first. And what we'll do first is we'll come here to hit auto groups. And for those of you who don't know kind of what I'm talking about, anytime you have something that's really thin and really tiny, again, like you have to think of gravity and how everything is kind of being pulled down. And so with grass, you know, you want as grass, eyelashes, hair, you want as little support as possible. Even though you can go crazy with resin printing and you can add support everywhere, there's still a lot of cleanup that gets involved that you want to kind of prevent if you can. So anything that's done at a 45-degree angle to 90-degree angle typically prints really, really well. Anything that's a little bit more, you know, will cause issues. So because of how small it is, I'm not quite sure if it will be successful. You could take that risk, which is kind of where this is coming from. For me, I think what we'll do is we'll plan to not have it, or we'll plan to sculpt and have it in more like. Right now, I kind of just scattered it everywhere. I also hit auto groups, and that is taking forever to group. I do apologize for that. I have a tendency to like brush. Add a memory. There we go. Okay. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and grab this right here. I'm gonna start grabbing the stuff that I need. Grab the sky. Grab this. These are chunky boys. Big pieces of grass. And let's take this. Ah, there's that skeleton that I hid there. Let's go ahead and lasso that guy. Gonna come in. So I hid a skeleton in here. And I know it'll be printable. I gotta come through and select all of this. Ooh, I love this song. I don't know if you guys can hear it, but I love this song. I say that every time. Okay. A lot of pieces. I should have welded some of this before I started. I have this habit of keeping things pretty much like in its raw state. I don't ever like to deviate from that. I don't like to decimate my models until I'm certain that it's going to be the way it is and merge it all together. So I have a lot of pieces that are like this. So trust me when I say it's probably not the best workflow to emulate, but I always get the results I'm looking for, and that's half of it, right? So what I'm gonna do is go ahead and go to split and split hidden now. So what I'm doing is I'm separating the visible parts from the non-visible so that I can go ahead and focus on how I want to cut this. And I'm definitely thinking about cutting this in half to make it work. Or you know what? No. You know what? I think we're gonna leave it like this. I like this. The grass is fine and it's fun, but I don't know if I want to spend all day correcting my mistake. How do you hide parts again? Just by clicking on them. So what you do is you hold Control Shift and you have a few options. Select lasso, select rec. If you want to grab different polygroups, you choose select rec. And then what you do is you hold Control Shift and you tap on the object that you want to keep first. And then, oops. And then from there, Control Shift and then swipe down. And then that will hide that object. and then you can go ahead and start tapping on the stuff that you need to hide after the fact, like that. Yeah, lots of diorama grass you can add afterwards that look fantastic. Absolutely. Yeah, you know what? You convinced me. It sounds great. Let's do it. So with this bad boy, we're going to go ahead and just get rid of it. How do you delete part of a mesh? How do I delete part of a mesh? So if I have a cylinder, for example, and I want to delete part of it, all I do is you can either drag and hide the parts that you want to keep, and then when you switch over to, let's say I want to delete that backside, you just go to delete hidden. So that's geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, and that will delete part of a mesh. And now there's nothing in the background, and then you can just go ahead and like close holes. And close holes is also right underneath, right here under modify topology, close holes. Thank you, Frank. You're too kind, man. All right. Not a problem. Okay, cool. So actually, you know what? Then we don't need to split this because we got rid of the grass. We can always use some sort of, realistic, like miniature model grass. So you know what? We don't need to split it at this point because we know that this will print really well. Let's go ahead. Let's go back here. The grass would be the only problem, so I'm going to go ahead. And that's the other thing too. Sometimes you might sculpt something that ultimately is very difficult to print, and you could try it. There's always benefits in trying something if you're not sure. Do a little test print on its own, just kind of like I did with the Silent Princess. I don't know if you guys remember the Master Sword that I did, but I will tell you right now, I pushed the boundary a lot on this guy. Let's see if my camera will focus. But I pushed the boundaries a lot because you could see just how small this stem and this this leaf is. So I really pushed that to see if that was printable. And you could see these little tiny parts right up here. Again, that's really, really small. But the way I printed it was upside down. So that way these didn't need any supports whatsoever when it was printed. So that was my intent with the grass. So it can be done. It's just how much work do you want to put into it? It's up to you, you know. So the same thing with that. I could easily get it to print, but it'll just take more work than maybe I wanted to. So we're going to go ahead and keep it like this, which will be perfectly fine. And now to kind of mitigate a lot of my topology or my density, so to speak. I have 63 million. I need to start dropping this topology number down so that ZBrush doesn't yell at me every 5 seconds. So when you are satisfied with the subtool, we need to merge it together, and then we need to decimate it to get it print ready. So how do we do that? I like to use project history a lot to make sure I keep a lot of this detail. But what I'll do is I'm going to go up to my history timeline. I'm going to hold Control and touch right there now that everything is merged together. And that's going to be the history and how I keep the detail aspect of things. And now what I'm going to do is first I'm going to Dynamesh it. Then I'm going to project details. Then I'm going to decimate it. Dynameshing it will make sure everything is watertight. Projecting details will make sure I have the details that I want. And then decimation will bring it down to a printable size that then we can make sure that is still watertight, nice and print, but we hold all the details. Hey, what is going on? Hello, hello. Ludabido. How are you doing? I want to make sure I read that name right. So what we're going to do is go up to Z plugin. Now I have Dynamesh Master and Dynamesh Utility. I've been using Dynamesh Utility a lot more because it is a Pixologic downloadable plugin. And if you don't have it, what you can do is you can go to Pixologic. So if you go to Pixologic, then you go to resources. Where are we? Get ZBrush. Come on, where are you? Come on. You would think you know what you're doing. Community. There it is. Oh my goodness. Don't mind me. Come on. Just get ZBrush. Wow, I am all over the place. I'm just going to take a moment to apologize, guys, that I am just all over the place and can't think halfway. Go to support resources. There we go. If you come on down, there are ZBrush plugins. And then if you scroll down, you get a bunch of plugins. A lot of these are already installed. But then as you scroll on down, I think it's towards the bottom, there's some unofficial ones. Quick Scaler, layer depth, etc., etc. But you will get, where are you? Dynamesh utility right here. This one is still unofficial, but it works out really, really well. And that is, so then when you install it, you have it right here. And that's what I use. I'm going to go ahead and turn blur down to 0 because I don't want it blurring too much. And I want to take it down to about 1 million. So 1.5, that's pretty good. And we're going to go ahead and hit Dynamesh. Now, if you make sure that all your subtools are intersecting with each other, that they're kind of running into each other, then you should have no problem Dynameshing it and then having it become watertight pretty quickly. It's really nice to see a stream by Pixologic and Twitch. Yay! Awesome, Southie. And just like that, we had 13 million. Now we're down to 1.5, and we can zoom in here, and you can see that, yeah, some of this kind of got muddy. That's where the project detail is going to come into play. So we're going to go ahead, and we're going to go down to Subtool. We're going to go to Project, and we're going to go ahead and leave Geometry and Color on, and we'll hit Project History. This will take all the history that's within your timeline that you've marked and try to bring back all of that information. So we'll go ahead and hit Project History. That will take color and detail and try to recall it back. Get some water. And it might take a second. Sometimes can be a little bit intense. There we go. Now if we zoom in, we could see, yeah, some parts broke a little bit. But ultimately, based on the scale of it, that looks totally fine. I really like that. We can always go back in ourselves and like push little details. Like we can come in here, maybe with the /3 brush, and we can actually start like carving in a little bit. If we want something to be pushed a little bit more, which I highly recommend doing. You know, if something didn't go quite the way you want and you have to resculpt it, there's nothing wrong with that. Just get in there and kind of just make sure it is exactly how you want it to be. Which I think that's going to be fine. There we go. So, there. Yeah, kind of cut those in a little bit. Let's do that right there. Right there. And right there. Perfect. Overall, I think that's looking pretty good. And now we can save that. And that's what we're going to start doing with all the other subtools. Is projecting like backing? Not quite sure what you mean by backing, but projecting, what it's doing is it's taking either, you have two different types of projection. You have project all, which will take the subtools that are above, that are selected, and take the color and detail and project that onto the model below it. Then you have project history, which will, if you select a point in time in history, kind of like what I did here, it will then pinpoint that time in history and how the model looked at that time, and then it will basically grab that detail, grab that color, and push it, project it back onto its current state. Not quite sure what backing means, but that's essentially what I did. Kind of think of it like if you had a projector, like a projector, like a light projector or a video projector, and you put it onto the wall, and then you traced what you saw that was being projected. It's kind of like that. Oh, kind of like baking, not backing. Oh, yeah, it kind of. Yeah, it bakes all that detail back on there. Yep. What's my favorite brush that I use often? I love clay buildup. That's one of my favorite brushes. Use it all the time. The other brush that I use, that's probably my second favorite, would be the Damn Standard. And then I have a couple SK brushes that I really, really love and use quite often, like the SK Slash. Slash 3 is a really good brush as well, but I default to clay buildup. It's a great brush. Would adding all the subtools to a folder and then doing a boolean on them accomplish the same thing without losing detail from Dynamesh? Depending on how you approached it. So you could put all this. You could put all the subtools that you want to merge together into a folder, then merge them together. If you're just merging, I don't think there's any need to boolean them. You could just merge and then Dynamesh. But yeah, that could be a way. So if you are like using boolean to cut a certain shape out, that could be beneficial. But yeah, essentially you could do it that way too. But what I do recommend, if you do choose to use boolean, be careful on how the topology gets rewritten. You want to ensure that things are watertight. That's why I default to Dynamesh as being my primary resource, because Dynamesh ultimately will take everything that's on the inside of your model and delete it. So I had like the rocks that were pushed in here. So let's take a screen grab real quick. If I screen grab this, and then I take, let's go back in time. Okay, so let's go back in time to right about here, right? So you can see all of the different models. If we take a look at, so you can see my chest, the skull, everything. It's embedded in there, and basically Dynameshing it, that will ensure. I got to do it again. I just made a mistake. That will ensure that everything gets deleted the way that you want it to. So, yeah, if we take this, and you can even see too, like I had parts inside of the inside the chest that were also needing to get removed. So if we take this and we go through that process one more time, go ahead and Dynamesh it. Once it gets Dynameshed, then it deletes everything on the inside. You don't have to worry about that. Yeah, you could do a boolean and it will keep it as one manifold piece. Yes, it can. Absolutely. I have just had it to where it doesn't always remove everything from the inside like Dynamesh would. Not saying you can't do it, just saying that for me personally, you can see here, Dynamesh will remove everything as it is, and you don't have to worry about that. What's the difference of using Dynamesh Utility plugin? Dynamesh Utility plugin, the main function of it is that you can select the poly count that you want, and then you can actually just create a shell. You can essentially just really quickly get a number that you need that still retains a high count without using normal Dynamesh, where if you go to Dynamesh normally in this slider, this resolution slider, that's based on the viewport. So if you want 1,000,000, you can't just type in 1,000,000 here and say I want 1,000,000 polys. But here with Dynamesh Utility, this number, this 1.5, that's exactly how many polys that you want. So if I want 1,000,000 polys, I could just type it in and it does the work for me. It's a bit faster and a little bit more accurate than utilizing normal Dynamesh. But here's the cool thing. Dynamesh Utility, when you use Dynamesh, notice that my Dynamesh is active with a certain resolution on it. Those two work hand in hand together. Dynamesh Utility tells Dynamesh exactly what to do based on your user input, so that way you get a more accurate, an accurate topology reading when you need to hold high detail instead of guessing. So it's really just doing the maths. Yep, it is just doing the maths for you. Yeah. All right, let me go ahead and project detail real quick. So does this make sense, guys? I want to make sure I'm not, like, making it more complicated. Essentially, when 3D printing stuff, you just want to ensure that watertight is exactly what it is. And there's another way that we're going to check to ensure that it's watertight. And what we can do, let me catch myself up to speed here with this real quick. I made these other adjustments. Because this was kind of like that. Kind of cut an extra a little bit. There we go. Okay. Perfect. Okay. And then what we're going to do, let's go ahead and save this real quick. Now I'm going to save this as number 3 because now I've started making changes to specific models, and I always want to make sure that I can go back. So I always save multiple CTLs throughout my process, just in case. But now what we can do is, if we want to make sure that this is watertight, we can do it one of two ways. We can go ahead and see the inside of our model by selecting part of it, going down to display properties and turning on double. And as long as there's nothing floating on the inside of our model and everything looks like it's pretty much, pretty much clean, you know, everything looks like it's just inverted from the inside, it's most likely watertight. But what we can do is go up to transform and go down to analyze selected subtool. That will ask what the scale is. You click that. And then if it comes through and says subtool is not watertight, then what we can do is there's probably like a random hole or something that you're just not seeing. So what we can do is go to geometry, modify topology, click close holes, click weld points. Now let's go back. Still says not watertight. So let's go ahead and run Dynamesh one more time. And what we could do, again, because Dynamesh Utility is saying that it is 1.5 and Dynamesh is lit up, if we go to our geometry and go to Dynamesh and is lit, if we take control and, control and drag, it will reactivate Dynamesh, and that should pretty much do it from there. Close holes. Let's try it one more time. Wow, it is not watertight. Why is that? Let's make sure we're not missing anything. Oh, you know what? The other thing we can do, so sometimes you might have floating pieces that is somewhere. That's probably what it is. So what we can do is run auto groups, and let's see if there's any floating pieces happening, which can happen sometimes. So if you go to polygroups and hit auto groups, and then control select touch and then drag, nope, nothing is floating. Okay. Well, then let's go back to geometry, weld points, close holes, rerun Dynamesh. Let's try that one more time. Okay. Oh, that's super helpful. I was struggling with that today. Oh, perfect. Glad that's helpful. Yay. All right. Now we can move on to our next tool. Does this make sense? Hopefully this makes sense for everybody. Let's turn this on. Loop. So now we have this guy right here. Can't mesh integrity fix it? That is a great idea. Let's go to mesh integrity and let's try it. I actually haven't played with that often. Usually I get that to work, so let's try that. Test complete. Nope. Let's do check mesh in. Sometimes too, what I will do is I will run a third-party subtool. I will run a third-party subtool checker a lot of times, because sometimes you'll get this where it just says it's not watertight, but if you check your model and make sure that there's nothing on the inside, which it doesn't look like there is. If you check it, then what I would recommend is like running netfab and check your parts there. Other slicers like Lychee, Prusa Slicer, they will go through and double check and make sure that your model is perfectly fine. But I'm not seeing any errors. And if your transform is still telling you it's not watertight, I would just run it through one of those. I used to never have this say watertight, and I didn't have too many problems with it. It's not something you want to lose sleep on. Netfab Online is dead now. That is correct, yeah. What I recommend is Lychee or Prusa Slicer. Actually, I recommend Prusa Slicer. Not to shout out another company or anything, but there are third-party ways that you can go ahead and fix it and make sure. But I would almost guarantee that even though it's saying it's not watertight, that it is going to be watertight, because again, the way to visually inspect your model is just make sure there's no floaty bits and run auto groups. Check it. If you can click and swipe and there's nothing popping up, no floaty parts, you should be fine. Yeah, exactly. Exactly, Hero Bench. But you guys don't want to lose any sleep over it not saying that it's watertight or not watertight. At the end of the day, there are ways around it. I have a weird thing that my model says it's not watertight, then duplicate, and the new one says it was. Ooh, I'm curious. Let's try that. I just duplicated it. Nope. Mine says still not watertight, but that's okay. Again, visual inspect. Just make sure that there's nothing else on the inside, and you should be fine. And we can do this with all of our guys. Okay, let's move on to the next one. Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and grab the move tool, and what we're gonna do is actually kind of position some of this around. And we're gonna thicken some of this up. Make sure that that's there, like that. Now this guy is small, so let's check the scale of him. So if we go to set scene scale, it's gonna base it off this guy. He's 21 by 29 by 22. He's barely an inch tall, which is perfectly fine. So we can keep him. I'm pretty much thinking we can keep him as one piece. But we're gonna thicken up some of this cloth right here, because this cloth right here, I'll tell you right now, this cloth is thin. So we'll grab the gizmo, transpose. Yeah, it's barely 0.2 millimeter. So we want to thicken that up a little bit. And the easiest way to do this is actually go grab the move brush, go to brush, auto masking, and backface. Because then what we can do, we can literally just start grabbing the areas we want to thicken, and we're just going to start pulling this out. And this will run it into the mesh. And we'll just do this. And when we want, if you have a shortcut like I do, you could turn backface mask on and off. Kind of push this back in. And then turn it back on real quick. And I'm just going to thicken up a lot of this area. And notice I'm just kind of adding thickness where I think it needs to. I'm not really going too crazy with it. Because again, he's so small. He's barely an inch tall. Like that. If I turn backface mask off, then I can push this in where it's going to intersect a little bit better. There we go. Perfect. Let's check his teeth and fingers real quick. His teeth are little nubs. His ears, actually. Let's check the thickness of that. That should be fine. Yeah, 0.6. This little thin spot right up here. 0.5. That's good. So I try to keep the thickness of something above 0.2, 0.3. Let's check his nails, actually. If I grab this nail. It's nail thickness. Oh, that's pretty thick. Okay. That'll work. So yeah, lots of maths, but this should be a lot better now. Let's thin that out. Let's turn backface mask back on. Let's thicken up this area a little bit more. Let's do that. And because he's a mini, we can kind of just go nuts with him a little bit. 6:30, so we have a good amount of time. Okay. There we go. Okay, now we're going to want to go ahead and merge this guy together, and then we'll go ahead and do the same thing. So now it's a lot of repeat, like rinse and repeat, where you have the thing that you want merged together, and then you can go ahead and Dynamesh him, project that history back, and then make sure that he's watertight. So let's go ahead and save it. Now, you might be asking, should I add a key to this? And that's a great question. And before we do anything else, what we'll do is we'll turn off everything that we want to turn off except for this model. And let's take him. Let's position him on the bed where we think we might want him to be. I think I'm going to want him right about there. Ish. Let's not complicate it. So let's actually move him a little bit more over here. Push him back. And perfect. Yeah, that's going to be good. Okay. So now that we know where he's at, let's actually turn off this section and let's prep our key real quick. So making a key in ZBrush is really, really simple. We're just going to take a cube and from there, we're going to taper it so that it fits in really, really nice. So with this right here, let's actually make sure we don't have any subdivisions, which we don't. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab the IMM Primitives basic brush, so that's B, I, and then T. I'm going to grab a QQ. I'm just going to go ahead and draw this out, something like that. And then I'm going to go ahead and split unmasked and push down on my keyboard. So now I have this guy right here. And let's modify this guy. So let's go BZM. And let's delete the edge loops we don't need. And all I'm going to do is highlight this bottom side. I'm going to mask this off. So you take the mask lasso actually and mask. If you hold Alt, you'll notice that your mask turns white. Let go, it's black. So if you hold Alt, it will mask the opposite side of what you're trying to grab. And then we're going to go ahead and kind of scale that in so it's something like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to clear the mask. And I'm going to make a custom key that's going to fit this foot. I'm going to scale it this way. Maybe scale down a little bit more. And because he's so small, I'm actually going to give a pretty decent key. There we go. And now I just do the exact same thing over here. I grab that primitive brush, but because I have one key right here, we'll actually label that key. I'm just going to go ahead and draw out another one, and it will recognize that foot. BZM, get rid of the different edge loops I don't need. Mask off. Scale this down. Select this guy, and now I'm just going to go ahead and add another custom key. Actually, you know what? For this one, let's scale this right here on this foot. Something like that. And what I'm going to make sure is that the key is embedded into his foot right where I need it to be. There we go. Let's do something like that. So it's not so obvious on the toes. Same with this one. Maybe scale that down and then push that in a little bit into that foot right there. Something like that. So now we have keys on the bottom of his foot that we can use. We'll merge it together, and then we'll use him to cut this out when we get to the final stages. Which will be perfect. So let's go ahead and save it. Save, save, save. So I'm actually going to turn around and I'm probably going to ask the guys over at Pixo. I'll launch a question about analyze selected subtools. See if there's something else on there too. Was thinking about it more, especially going over your question, Willstar, about it saying it's not watertight and then it's duplicate. It could be just a little bit of a error or something. I'm probably overthinking that. Okay. So now what I like to do, real quick, let's take this right there. Gonna move this over a little bit more. There we go. Okay, so what I like to do now is actually make sure that this is complete, nice and sharp. You don't want it to be too rounded or too bevel. So what we're going to do is I'm going to go to, we're going to go to polygroups, and we're going to go to group by normals. And then we're going to go up to geometry, crease, and then crease polygroups. And then I'm going to subdivide a few times, say 50 to 100 and 50 to 2,000 polys. You don't need it too much. Delete lower. Now I have something that's a little bit more dense. And now what I'm going to do, I'm actually going to take this key and duplicate it. So I'm going to hold Control-Shift-D. That's going to duplicate. I'm going to hide one and send it all the way at the bottom and call this keys. Because I can always reuse those. Anytime you make a key, reuse it. It's just easier that way. You don't have to repeat the process more than once. And now what I'm going to do is merge this down with my keys down here. So now I have this. And now we're good to make this dynameshed. So let's save it. Go into our history, hold Control, tap that bad boy. And then from there, go up to Z plugin, go up to Dynamesh utility, turn blur all the way down. Yeah, 150 is good. He's 5,000, I mean, he's 5 million polys for complete. So we can go ahead and actually, 1.5 is not going to be too low. So it might retain a lot of the details that are already there. So let's go ahead and hit Dynamesh and see what it does. So there we go. And actually that kicked it down to like only 500,000. Not too bad. So let's go ahead and project history. So again, go to subtool, project history. Now all that history is projected onto him. Let's take a look at it without any paint. I like to do that a lot. Let's go to geometry, modify, close holes, weld points. Maybe take /3, come through here a little bit. Not too bad. Oh, thank you, man. I appreciate it. So here's all that color. That color got wonky. You don't need the color anymore. So we're going to go ahead and get rid of that. There we go. I like to turn the color off anyway. Perfect. There. So now we have this. Everything looks to be pretty good. Again, we could check that. Let's go to geometry, close holes, weld points, mesh integrity. Let's just have it fix it just in case. Let's see if this is working for us. Analyze subtool. It says it's not watertight. Well, let's go ahead and look on the inside. And the inside looks pretty good. Let's actually look right here. Okay, so there's a little bit of floaty bits right in here. So this is what I was talking about. There's a little bit right here that's kind of funky. So that means that there was space between where the model was, where the subtools were, so that it didn't weld perfectly the way it should. So we could fix that. Same here. So there's little bits and pieces right here. So that's why it's flagging not watertight this time. Because it thinks there's little pieces on the inside, which of course that there are. So let's go back in history, Control Z. We can actually go through a lot of that. The color is only important if you plan on utilizing that. But no, it's not too important. Not for 3D printing. Not for average 3D printing. Let's do that. So do you ever feel you need to use Decimation Master for this types of things? Sometimes, yeah. Because this is under 500,000, I may not use Decimation Master for this one, but definitely for the base, because the base itself is 1.4 million polys. I will decimate the base for sure, but for this guy, yeah, no. So let's do this real quick. Oops, don't do that. Let's take him, let's flip this, and let's see what's going on here. Let's come in here. Okay. let's see what's happening. Where do we fail? Okay. So this right here, there's a gap right here. We could fix that. So let's do that. I am sometimes reluctant to use Dynamesh since you might lose some details like seams. How do I manage that? So I manage that one of two ways. What I'll do is, again, like you're seeing me here, I'll project history. A lot of times that solves that problem. The other thing is, sometimes you'll want to resculpt something or go back in and just highlight certain areas. There's nothing wrong with going in. Sculptress Pro really helps with that. But before you decimate and you're just Dynameshing things, you can go back in and fix it. Because Dynamesh is a viable option to sculpt on. So you can go back and clean some stuff up. The other thing too that you could do is use contrast, like contrast delta, to sharpen things up. If you have really good clean topology, when you start breaking it down, you'll actually find that moving it to Dynamesh and projecting onto it isn't going to give you too much problems. But sometimes I've had to go in and re-sculpt certain details or punch it further because it's not going to show up in the print. Because again, you lose about, let's say, anywhere between 10 to 15% of detail in the 3D print after all your printing, post-processing, and cleanup. So if you really make sure that the details are cut in deep, when you lose that detail, it actually look normal. So you want to push those details even harder. So the other, I guess another way you can manage that is when you know what your print settings are and how your parts come off the printer, you know, cut your details harder. So for example, if we take the /3 brush, if you usually have a seam that's like this, cut it deeper like that, because then that will actually lose a lot of that. Well, you'll lose detail and it'll look more like this, where if you print this, it'll probably look softer like that. So if you really cut that detail in, it'll look more like this when it prints versus that. So anytime you're prepping, make sure those details are punched. Okay. Hopefully that answers your question. Let's go ahead and trim back face mask on this and let's pull this up. Absolutely, yeah. But I run into it at work all the time. We're like, when we know we're getting something ready to go to production, we always go through our models and make sure they're really decked out with the proper detail that we need. Don't be afraid to cut deep. Cut real deep. Okay. I'll soften that up a little bit. Relax that there. Fix some of that. Really make sure that that's pushed. So I'll have to do this with the other models as well. Let's actually go through and hit auto groups real quick. Select this guy right here. Another way you can go about avoiding errors like this is you can fill certain areas with more material. So let's take actually like a sphere. We'll hide this. Okay, because there's plenty of holes right here, right? So what we could do is either push and pull this material in to ensure that this is actually going to be fine. Like that. But a lot of times too, what you could do is you can grab something like a mesh, something like this sphere. You can split unmasked, turn on transparent. You can bring this sphere in, and you can actually fit this to this arm. and I've done this a bunch of times before. It's just another way to ensure something is perfectly watertight. Kind of just push that in there a little bit and then merge it back down. So a bunch of little ways. I'm actually going to go ahead and duplicate this. Do this to this other arm. Like such. So yeah, 3D print prep can take some work. But it's all worth it in the end, guys, I promise. There we go. I would say 9 times out of 10, prepping for 3D print is just troubleshooting. There we go. Let me take this and let's just merge it back down. So let's go merge, merge down, say okay. There we go. And let's make sure that this right here turn on back face. Make sure this is intersecting the way we want it. There we go. You can even use topological. So if I don't want to mask areas off, go to brush, auto masking, topological, and then I could just make sure I grab the inside of that mesh. I can pull that out a little bit, like such. There we go. Perfect. Okay, let's try that again. Go ahead and save it. Why you save? Okay. Like here, I've kind of lost a little bit of detail, so I could smooth this down like this. Come in with Dynamesh, I'm sorry, not Dynamesh, Damn Standard, and I could cut some of this all back in there, like such. Cuts and keys can make or break a model. Bad cuts are always a nightmare. Absolutely. But you know what? Like it's super important to showcase that, like, yeah, this stuff takes a lot of time. And it's definitely just a troubleshooting position. You know, kind of fix that back in there. Every time I've prepped for 3D print, I've always just known that it takes a while, you know. It's not going to always be perfect out the gate, even when planning for it. Even when, like, you're creating a belt, for example, and you use a sphere over, you know, whatchamacallit, like, you know, just floating single-sided topology. Sometimes just unexpected problems occur, and then you just kind of pivot. There we go. Okay. There. Let's go ahead and save it. And now what we're going to do is we're going to go to... All right, let's do this again. So we're going to mark our history one more time. So I'm going to hold Control and touch right there. So that's going to mark this new history spot. Okay. And now what I will do is actually increase the resolution a bit. So I told it to go about 2 million, and it didn't. It actually went a lot lower. So we're going to go up a little bit higher, and we'll say 2.5, just to ensure that we get a good Dynamesh. Blur 0, and then let's go ahead and Dynamesh. Absolutely. Do I paint my models? I do paint my models sometimes, not always. I'm not the best painter when it comes to actually painting. But yeah, sometimes I do. There we go. go ahead and turn on double. And that's looking a lot cleaner. Now, I highly recommend that you take as much time as possible to just get your print looking as clean as that you want. So, I'm going to turn off. I'm going to come in here a little bit. Detail some of the spots out. Smooth some areas that are a little bit busted. We'll come through here. And now we're going to punch some of this, because this is pretty faint. Yeah, some of this detail's a little soft. That's okay. Actually, let's back up real quick. Before I make any drastic changes, let's project history. Let's see what we got there. Yeah. All right. Yeah, that's better. Okay. Now I'm going to turn the paint off. I'm still going to go through and maybe hit some of these areas up. Bicep's a little bulgy right there. Smooth his bicep down just a bit. Doesn't have to be so crazy. There we go. Now we can come through. There's this little imperfection. Smooth that down. Let's take the /3. I love the /3 brush for cutting little grooves and details. But now if we come in here real quick, you could see how much nicer that inside looks when we added that sphere versus before it was really chunky and kind of all over the place. So we can come through here and touch up some of those areas. And if we're getting some really funkiness with our touch-ups, you know, then what we could do is turn on Sculptress, maybe use the damn standard, and then punch some of these details a little bit more, because now we're adding topology, the areas that we want, and cleaning up some of those areas so they're not so funky. Trim that down. There we go. This is where Sculptress comes in really handy. Go. And what I like to do now is go to Preview AO and actually put this at about 15. This kind of helps me see a little bit more of the details. You can also, I'm using Skin Shade 4. Let's put basic material on. Gives us a little bit better an idea of what our model's going to look like when it's printed. Smooth some of this down. Come back in. Recarve some of this detail in here. Coming back in and cleaning up some of the areas that maybe didn't come out so well is only going to make your model look that much better. There we go. Tongue's looking pretty good. Actually, what we can do is come in here and notice a little spot there. I'm going to inflate that a bit. And then we'll re-dynamish it, making that a little bit better. There we go. Yeah, nice. All right. Let's go ahead and save. And so this is a very repetitive process. But now with this guy right here, we could actually probably 3D print something like this on the bed. Actually more something like this on the bed. A little bit of supports on the back side. Hey, we could probably even support his head. Have him print. How to fix which ones? I don't want to move too fast. Do you mean those little jaggies on the inside? Like this little guy right here? Is what we'll do. If you want to fix anything that's floating on the inside, like this, what you can do is isolate it. So what we're going to do is I'm going to isolate this side right here. Now, this is where running your model through something like, you know, NetFab might help you out. But what you end up doing is isolating the part that you want to delete, like this. So you basically select it, okay? So notice this bottom part here is missing. What you do is you isolate the part of the model that you want removed by holding Alt. Yep, that's still there. Perfect. Want this. So I want that little piece removed. So that little piece was causing an issue in here. So what you do is you just go ahead and isolate it, hide it. Right? So now I have two parts right here. Come on, grab it. There you go. So this one little spot's isolated right there. And then all you do is you delete hidden. Come through, go to geometry, modify topology, delete hidden, and then re-dynamesh it, and you're good to go. You can come through, isolate that section, and now that little part that was floating out is gone, and you can go in and really make sure that you take care of those. I find that that's a little tedious. A lot of times when you go and put it in your slicer, you can run a fix and it'll remove a good chunk of those pretty quickly. But that is the way you would want to fix it if you want to get really crazy. And I just noticed right now, right here is a bit more like this. And again, guys, I apologize for being a little off today. Hopefully this is making sense. There we go. Now I'm just cleaning up my model. There we go. Sweet, sweet, sweet. Okay. There we go. Now I'm just going through. Let's take a look at this guy right here. Kind of carving in a lot of that detail like I mentioned earlier. So just make sure everything is punched the way you want it. What's fun is actually adding this detail back, I find. With those eye bags coming in. You just really push it. Push it real good. Very good. Alright. Now, the other thing you could do, and I like to do this a lot, and it's a lot faster. Once you get your main details done and you really, really like it, what you could do is you can go through, you can even mask off this area right here because I don't want these keys affected. Soften that a bit. And I'm going to go to deformation. I'm actually going to run the contrast slider up a bit. If we zoom in here on his face, let's back up. See, everything's kind of still soft right now. So if you run the contrast slider up, let's go 30. Before, after, before, after. So here's before. Here's after. So it just punches that detail just a little bit more. So you can see how soft his eye is here versus right here. And again, I masked off this area so it doesn't affect it so much. This way now everything is nice and sharp. So like I said, just come through here with the Sculptress brush if you want. And just add that detail back. Resculpting this detail is really, really worth it. Now he is an inch tall, so I am fighting the mesh a little bit, but it'll be worth it. There we go. Come through here. There we go. Looks like his tooth broke right here. Now what you could do, I'm going to regrow that tooth back. The other thing you could do too is if your geometry is not as high as you would like it, let's add 5 through here. I'm actually going to go ahead and swipe that down. Rebuild that topology. Yeah. There we go. Okay. I'm digging that. Let's save it. So yeah, go through, take your time, make sure that you're really just liking your model, and look at it from afar too. Does your model read the way you want it to read? You know, a lot of times we'll be so far into here, we'll say, oh, this isn't going to work, this doesn't look good, and you're trying really hard to fix a lot of stuff, then you back all the way out, and you're like, oh man, that actually reads really, really well. You don't want to get too caught up in making it, you know, like you don't want to get too caught up in the pixels. You want to put your best foot forward, but also to, you know, don't carve something in there that may not be seen. No, so like I'm making pretty big cuts. Then I'm going to zoom out, and that's reading really, really well. So if you can read it from here, you should be pretty good. And then anything that's not reading or might seem too soft, go in there. Like his muscles look really soft. This detail in here probably could read a little bit better. So I'll rebuild this by carving this in. Let's actually isolate this guy right here. You can even turn the lazy radius up a bit. There we go. There we go. Something like such. Whee! There we go. Yeah, that's looking better. And we'll do it for this arm as well. We'll carve it here. If you decide to release the full model for purchase, I won't sell it if I release the full model. Cut one with full detail, about 16 inches. Love to print this full thing scale. at that scale and would make the centerpiece. Ooh. Yeah, I'm actually planning on just releasing this. This is just true fan art. So I typically, anything I do here, I just release. I never sell fan art. It's not something I do. It's not my IP. But I have a couple other ideas. I do want to also do a Bokoblin bust as well. So once I get this prepped, I'll release it, and then after that, I'll be releasing a Bokoblin bust, which will be pretty large. Ooh, you know what? I'm gonna actually right here. So this is why you want to go through your model and kind of double check and kind of get things fixed. Now, something else that you could do, I learned this one little handy trick, and this gets a little interesting, so bear with me. This is just something useful that I've discovered before. I'm going to save it. Is that if you would like to have things dynameshed a little bit better, but you're at this resolution right here, what you could do is scale up your model and remember what this number is down here. So usually you're given like 1. So I'm going to try to get that at about 2. So now it's twice as large. And then I'm going to dynamesh it. And it's going to dynamesh it at a much higher detail. And then I'm going to scale that back down. What I had it. So it's now at 1. Let's put this all the way down. Which is about there, I think. Make sure that's right. Ooh, too small. Scale that back down. Add them at about here. Right about there. Now, notice his Dynamesh detail's a little bit cleaner. That's a little like random tidbit for you. Scale your model up, especially if it's not set in stone. And then go through and Dynamesh it. Get a little bit of a cleaner Dynamesh. And then you put it back. How are you able to sell fan-made Nintendo? I want... No. Okay, so I do not recommend selling anything that's not your proprietary or intellectual proprietary IP. Anything that's not your own work, do not sell it. That's a huge no. I'm just going to be giving this away. So pretty much my goal is to prep it for 3D prints, and then I want to give it to you guys to just have and to hold. If you would like it, you can have it. I don't recommend selling. If it's not your property, do not sell it. Like, there's no other way around that conversation. If you didn't create it, it's not your original character, original design, do not sell. For me, I just create fan-made stuff and then give it away on here because on these streams, I can't actually show you anything that I'm working on. If it's under NDA, most of what I'm working on, 99% of everything I work on is NDA now. So yeah, so to clarify, I'm not going to be selling this, I'll just be giving this away. That's a great question. You're not able to really sell anything that's not your intellectual property, nor do I recommend you attempt to do so. There we go. That's opening yourself up to some dangers of the world. So, not recommended. Okay, let's make sure he's right where I want him to be. I didn't mess up the size or anything. Yeah, that's good. Does that make sense, Bunny? Let's go ahead and save this. Doop. Let's see here. Fan art falls in a gray area, not recommended. About the best answer anyone can give. Yeah, it just, for me, fall under the sword of, if you didn't create it, if you don't have the rights to sell it, don't sell it. Do you mean to keep the leather clean or roughed up in the end image? In the end render, it is textured, but at this scale, no texturing that I put on there other than wrinkles is going to actually show up in the print. It's too small. So instead of spending all my time adding leather detail that's never going to print, I would just rather leave that up to the paint job at that point. So yeah, I do mean to keep it relatively clean because again, barely these lines right here. These lines will show up. But if I were to put like lots of texture, it's not gonna show up very well. I'd have to really try. Did you build these sculptures for animation as well or only printing? I only did it for printing. Most of the stuff I do just gets manufactured as a toy of sorts, and I prototype everything with 3D printing. So 9 times out of 10, everything I do is for printing. But if I were to do, but what I did do for the Bokoblins, for example, I'm actually gonna load it for you. I actually loaded a non-posed, so I have a posed Bokoblin, and then I have a T-posed version of him. Where's my T-pose? There's posed. Boop, boop, boop. Where are you? Resized. I'm pretty sure I had a T-pose version. Usually I hold a T-pose version. It looks like maybe I didn't this time. Let's go ahead and delete that one. But yeah, usually what I'll do is I'll have a T-pose version saved out, and then I'll pose. Pose Bokoblin, pose. Where are we? Blue only. Let's try this guy. Yeah, so here's my A pose. This is usually what I do. So I could set him up for animation if I wanted to, because he's just in a basic A pose. Then when I pose, I save out another one. So this is generally what I would do, and highly recommended, especially if you're trying to get stuff ready for animation. Always save out an A or T pose. Not a problem, John. I'm just starting to learn ZBrush so I can make miniatures. I hear there are a lot of benefits to do Dynamesh versus ZBrush versus others. Which do I recommend for minis? So I recommend when you're sculpting to start off in Dynamesh, do a basic blockout, then go to ZBrush, then work in subdivisions. From subdivisions you can have better details, and then afterwards you will want to make sure your model is watertight. That's why a lot of people prefer Dynamesh, and I recommend, like what I'm doing now in this process, which is I take my model that is subdivided, delete it, Dynamesh it to make it watertight, and then decimation master afterwards to bring down the topology level. So how you decide to sculpt is up to you. I choose the Dynamesh to ZBrush method, but ultimately it's up to you. And then from there to finalize it, definitely recommend Dynameshing to ensure it's watertight, and then exporting. Do I retopologize at all or just Dynamesh? If I'm gonna make something for animation, I'll retopologize, but typically there's no need to in my workflow. So a lot of times it'll just be Dynamesh. Retopology is really great if you're going to be dealing with animation. It's highly recommended that you retopologize for animation, but luckily in 3D printing world, you typically don't have to retopologize. That's completely optional. Depends on what it is you're going for. Sometimes retopology makes sense if you're like maybe struggling to get something looking the way you want it to look. and it's easier to do it manually, highly recommend learning that skill because it's going to help you down the long run. Having that retopology skill, it's going to give you an idea of what good clean mesh looks like. It'll kind of ensure that what you're doing works. And then if you ever do end up wanting to make something for animation, then you already have that skill set. You retopologize in ZBrush, Maya, or something else? I typically retopologize somewhere else. I've done it in Maya before, and other programs like 3D Croat, stuff like that. You can retopologize in ZBrush. It is possible to do so. But yeah, maybe not the, yeah. Yeah, not a problem. Okay. What I recommend doing with ZBrush is make sure that you get ZRemesher working as best as you can. That will help you out in the long run. And if you have to retopologize, there are definitely good methods for that. I like retopo with ZModeler. Yeah, you could definitely retopo with ZModeler. I've done it before just to stay in ZBrush. I classify retopoing with ZModeler kind of like old school retopology. It's there are some really great methods within ZModeler, and you could do it. You could do it easily. I feel like I have to sneeze. Hold on. Excuse me. Yeah, if you wanted to if you wanted to ZRemesh or retopologize in ZBrush, let me show you how to do that. Let's go ahead and save real quick. Basically, the easiest way to do it, let's say I wanted to do this model. I wanted to actually, you know what, let me load in the Bokoblin. How quick do I emphasize pieces? What do you mean by emphasize pieces? Can you elaborate a little bit more? I'm not quite sure I understand what you're saying. Okay. So real quick, let's say I wanted to Here, let's turn everything off. I'm gonna just copy this real quick. I'm gonna paste this here. So if you wanted to retopologize in ZBrush, all you have to do is grab your model that you want to retopologize, and then we're going to pick up a brush. We're going to go B, I, and then we're going to go H for primitives half. And there is a single polyplane here. And what you'll do is you'll actually drag this out on your model. Say something like that, should be fine. And then all you're going to do is hit BZM. Let's go ahead and split unmasked. So now we have this guy right here. Turn off solo. Turn on our polyframe by hitting Shift F. And then what you need to do is actually hover over an edge. And we're going to make a few settings. We're actually going to, on the edge, we're going to hit Extrude. And we're going to go to Snap to Surface. On the face, we're going to do nothing. And on a point, we're going to go ahead and snap to surface. Now all you need to do is start dragging out. And if you hold transparency, there we go. Now we're retopologizing in ZBrush. And then all we need to do is just start dragging some of this out. And this will just start us getting it. Now there are other tools, like if you wanted to get a certain edge going, if I tap Alt, it'll do the whole. If I tap Alt, it'll actually do one plane. Tap Alt again, it'll do the whole edge loop. Tap and hold, and it'll do everything. So this is a way that you can go ahead and quickly and effectively start retopologizing. And of course you want to do it, you want to take your time with it, of course. back that up a little bit. So this is how I would do it if you wanted to do it within ZBrush. Come through here real quick, grab that point, scale that down. Maybe take this, move this around. So definitely easy to start. How hard is it to make joint pegs that you can glue together once printed? Not too difficult, no, not too difficult. I can basically that's making a key cut. I can actually show you that right now too. Yes, read topology for 3D printing is not necessary. That is 100% accurate. But if you wanted to topologize in ZBrush, that's how you would start doing it. Let's go ahead and delete that. So how hard is it to make joint pegs that you can glue together? Not really hard at all. We can actually use the Boolean method. Now, let me ask CBS real quick. Can you clarify? Do you mean joints that are moved, or are we talking just basic key cutting, where like you just have a joint? You know, you just create a spot that you split it, cut it, and they fit together. Because if we're talking about something that's moving to articulation, that's a little bit more complex. But if we're talking about just simple joints, then, you know, like square pegs, really, really simple, easy to do. And I can show you the best way I would cut something like this, for example. Like this thing right here, let's actually dynamesh it, just so you can... Oops. Let's go right here, let's grab that guy. Actually increase the resolution. There we go, and let's project history. There we go. Just if the arm is going out too far or something, if you plan to glue together, no movement. Okay, yeah. So you get something like the arm. We'll take this guy so we can use him as the example. Paste. Let's delete this guy. Okay. So let's say we want to cut his arm so that we have something, right? We could do this really simply by using live Boolean and just using a plane and creating a custom key. Or what you could do is you could split it. You could split it off each other and then create a more custom fit. So what I would recommend, like if I wanted to cut this arm to fit, I'll show you the splitting off method instead of the Boolean. So what I would do is actually I would come through. Let's turn off our subdivision so we have a nice dense model. And we're going to mask off this section right here. So I'm going to want to cut his arm right here. I'm going to mask this area off. And now if you want to hide seams, this is the best possible way to do it. Mask the area that you want to cut off. Something like this. Okay. Get that nice and clean in there. Something like that. Let's turn on our wireframe hitting Shift F, or you just come up to Poly F. And what we're going to do is hit Control W. So Control W, what that will do is it'll take that mask and make it a new poly group. Okay. And what we're going to do is actually make sure this mask is pretty well clean. Something like that. We can tighten up this mask selection by holding Control Alt and tapping on the mask. That will sharpen that. Or you could just go over to masking. And then they have sharpen mask, shrink mask, blur mask, all these different options. But you just basically make a really decent selection. Like what we have here. And then Control W. Okay. What's up? How you doing? Okay. Now that we have this, I'm going to go ahead and select the arm. And I'm going to split hidden. And split hidden is under subtool, split hidden. So now we have his arm and we have a body. Okay. And then what we're going to do is actually go ahead and we'll dynamesh this or close holes. So that way it's now like that. Go up to the arm, solo, and we'll also do the same thing. We'll close holes. Okay. So now we have something like this. And now we're just going to do a bit of sculpting. We're going to create a key. We're going to add it in there because now we have two separate pieces. Okay. We have his arm and we have his body. Now we're going to create a key, kind of clean this up a little bit to make this so that it's custom fit, but it looks pretty good. What I'm going to do is actually delete some of these little flaps here that may be problematic. So we'll delete hidden, close holes, maybe smooth down some of these areas. Possibly re-dynamesh it if we need to. Make sure some areas are going a little bit better than others. Delete hidden, close holes. There we go. There's always a little bit of cleanup when you're prepping for 3D printing. Areas like this, delete hidden, close holes. Okay, there's always going to be a little bit of cleanup. Essentially what we're going to want to do is come through here. I'm actually going to smooth this so you can see just a little bit better where that seam would be. Now what we're going to do is we're actually going to add our key. So let's grab our basic IMM primitives, which can be found under B, I, and then T. And then we'll just grab that QQ. We'll drag that out. And now we're just going to fit this to our model. Okay. Now the key that I recommend that most people utilize is always going to be a tapered key because it seems to fit better. If it's completely straight and it shrinks a little bit in the printer, then you actually might get a little bit of where it's not fitting correctly. So what I always recommend to do is have a tapered key. We'll go ahead and auto group. We'll separate this for a second. So we'll split hidden, and then we'll actually come through here on these edges. We'll delete these edges. Oops, did not mean to dynamesh it. We'll mask off the side that we don't want to shrink, and we'll taper that down a little bit. Something like that. Now you can fit the key any angle that you want. It doesn't really matter how the key is fitting in here. That's completely up to you. You can have it to where it's angled this way. You could have it to where it's cutting in this way. It's completely up to you. You can fit that in there like such. Get a pretty decent key. The most important part is whatever is the male side of the key, you want that to be nice and solid, and then the female side, you want that to be open. Okay, we have something like this now. Now this is a quick, rough demonstration, so take your time, make sure that the model's nice and clean the way you want it. What we're going to go ahead and do is merge this back down. And then we're going to dynamesh this together. So now that it's one piece. And then all we're going to do is cut against our other model. So we could duplicate our arm by holding Control-Shift-D. We could put our main guy in a folder. We'll call this cut. Then we're going to take one of the arms. We'll hide this for a second. And then we're going to go ahead and turn on live Boolean. Usually it's up here for you guys. For me, I have it right down here. turn on live boolean, and then we're going to set that arm to cut. So you notice we have a few different options here. We have solid, there's cut, and then there's intersect. Choose cut. Here's that arm for a second. And you can see now it's cutting. It's now cutting into this area so that this would actually fit in there. Now, like I said, this is a rough demonstration, so you want to make sure that this area is nice and clean as much as possible and that it looks nice and fit. But that's how I would separate the arm, so that way it looks nice and seamless when it's sitting in there. So hopefully that works out for you. Yeah. Also, the other thing I'd recommend doing is on the cutting tool, the one that you're using to cut, what I would recommend is going to deformation and scale the inflate by like 1 or 2, not too crazy, just a little bit, just to give it a little bit of spacing. So then when you actually put this arm in here, there's actually a little bit of room. So if your printer, if the material in your printer shrinks a little bit, it'll fit a little bit nicer. And then after that, just go ahead and say Boolean folder, and it's going to go ahead and it's going to cut because we have live Boolean selected. And now we have this guy with his arm chopped off, and there's his arm right there. Now, of course, you know, again, a little rough, but hopefully you get the idea of it. Is there a specific size for the cube? No, there's no specific size. Just make it to fit. Most of the time, 3D printing keys, they're going to be custom. There are tons of artists out there that I can guarantee they've like regulated and they have a bunch of different standardized keys that work best for them. For me, I approach each model as a new one, so it's probably a little bit more. My approach is more custom. I always look at everything and say, how do I want to cut that? So I find that this method works the most. It's pretty easy. So I just kind of create my keys on the fly when I need to. It makes for a smoother process for me. It's just how my brain works. Is there a 3D printing IMM key brush on ArtStation that for free that gives you different key options for anyone that's watching the stream? There is, I'm sure there are. I don't have any I'd recommend, but what I would recommend is if you would like to create a custom key, what you could do, and this is really easy, let's go ahead and just delete all real quick. Go ahead and insert a cue. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to create these keys right now. I'm going to create 2 different styles, and then I'll give them away on my Discord after. I will save this, and I will upload it immediately while the stream is still live. So you guys can have these right away. Let me real quick share my Discord with you guys. For those of you who are joining, welcome in. Don't mind me, guys. I'm a little tired today. So if I seem a little bit off than usual. But here's one custom key that I recommend making. And then the other one, this one will be a little bit more like you place it and then you make your custom mask selections. That's kind of like what you did, what you saw me do. So let's do that one first. Let's go initialize. And we're just going to cube at 1 resolution. So it's this guy right here. I'll delete this thing. We don't need that. Okay, this will be key 1. All I'm going to do is I'm going to mask this section, stretch this key out. I'll select this guy, and I'm going to scale this up. So this will be the first key that I recommend doing. And what we're going to do is crease polygroups. I'm going to subdivide this a few times. Crease groups. Subdivide a few times. Take it to about 300,000. It'll be perfect like this. And what I'm going to do from here is I'm going to go ahead and go ahead, delete lower. I'm going to drag this and scale this up just a little bit. I'm going to scale this up at about 0.1. And what this will be is you'll have a cutter, and you'll have a you will have a cutter, and then you'll have a key that you attach. So I'll auto group. So you'll have this guy and then this guy. This guy will fit into this one perfectly, no problem. And essentially how you would use this key in particular, you would copy it, and like I said, with this guy's arm, you would paste this. Go ahead and scale it down. And you would actually place these right where you want them to be. So something like this. Okay, like I'm going to fit this right in here, and you adjust it together. You scale it down this way, scale it up however you would want to. Let's say we want to do this, and we'll pop it in there. Okay. And then what we'll do is we'll actually turn around, use select rec, grab one of them, you would split hidden. Okay. Then we'll take our main mask. I'm going to do this quickly just so you guys can see what it is I'm talking about. Delete lower, mask lasso. Like such. I'm going to select this guy right here. Okay. So we've got our mask. We're going to go ahead and Control W. What we'll do is we'll split hidden, right? And then we'll close holes. Go to this guy, close holes. So now we have that selection. And then what you'll do is you'll hide one of those things, and you'll then from there basically separate this. You'll have this guy that's fit in here, so this will cut against this tool. So let's put them in a folder. Actually, let's just do a quick select there. So what you would do is then you have this here, and then you would turn on live boolean and have it cut across. There we go. And then this other key would be able to fit right inside, and you would attach this key to this arm. So then it would fit like that, and they would fit each in every single one. So that would be the first way to utilize something like this key here. The other way, real quick before I miss anything, what do I recommend for really thin limbs on character? Example, I want to print a cartoon as thin limbs. Just make sure that the model size, the thickness is at least, let's see, layer size for FDM printing is about 0.2 millimeter. So I would say try to make sure that the thin limbs are at least like a millimeter or two. Or test your printer and see how thin you can go. But yeah, it's hard to give you an exact number without a little bit of trial. But I would say just try to keep the thickness of your limbs pretty, at least like a millimeter or two. Should be okay. You won't hold a lot of detail at that size, but I'm imagining that it's just like a thin noodle arm. It should be okay. Sweet. Okay. So that would be key number 1. We'll call this, we'll just call it key 1. I think I've saved some joints too. Now that I'm thinking about it, I think I've saved some joints. But let's do key number 2. Key number 2, which I use for most things when I just want a quick cut and I'm not really caring about seam lines. I'm going to insert a plane 3D. Okay, and for the plane 3D, we're going to make a custom key that is both a male and female cutter at the same time. This is just one that you're going to insert, and then you'll Boolean, and then you're good to go. So this is a more simplified version. And what we're going to do is go to geometry, and we're going to hit reconstruct a few times until we get a mesh like this. That's all, pretty simple. Hold on 1 second, guys. Sorry. Okay, sorry about that. What we're going to do is we have a plane 3D, so it's a single-sided geometry. If I turn on double, you can see I can see both sides. Turn off double, you can only see one side. This is going to be really, really helpful for cutting, for just inserting where you want and then hitting a live Boolean. So what we're going to do, let's see here. Hey, Peterson. Oh, thanks, dude. Man, I appreciate that. We're going to take our Z modeler, we're going to hover over the face, and we're going to go ahead and do Q mesh, because why not? Polygroup all. And I'm going to select these four right here, and I'm just going to delete my subdivision. I'm just going to drag this out. It's up to you how far you want that to be dragged out, but we're just going to select this plane, make sure there's no subdivisions, and then we're just going to drag this out. And what I'm going to do is actually select this section right up here, invert that selection, and I'm going to scale that down. So you can already see where we're going with this because it looks just like this guy. It's just on a plane. But that plane is going to give you a nice cutting section to work with, okay? So now if we actually turn on double, you could see that we have an inside and we have an outside. Now what I'm going to do real quick is a nifty little trick. I'm going to mask the inside here. And then I'm going to go ahead and actually bring that here. Actually, you know what I'm going to do? Yeah, let's do that real quick. There we go. Let's grab this right here. Yeah, we're just going to scale that out. Make that a little bit bigger. Actually, before we do that, you know what we're going to do? Forget that trick. Let's grab on this edge. Let's go to extrude, edge loop. I'm just going to extrude this out like that. Make it a little bit bigger. Let's uncrease. So what I did was I just grabbed an edge, extrude. As I was extruding, I held Alt, drag that out. So that's just making that a little bit larger. Then I'm going to go ahead and uncrease all. Hover over this edge, insert, single edge. I'm going to add in a couple more topology here just to have it. Because why not? It'll give us a little bit something more like that. Okay. So now this main side is going to be the tool that we need, and this outer side here is going to be the cutter. Now, what I'm not going to do is I'm not going to apply any thickness to this. Okay, not yet. What I'm going to do actually is go up to dynamic, turn that on, and see how this is kind of warping. We don't want that. So we're going to go to geometry, increase polygroups. And actually, let's crease a couple other edges. I want to crease this edge right here. And the reason for that is I want this to be as sharp as possible. And I also don't want it to warp. Okay, that should be perfectly fine. Let's try that one more time. Let's turn on dynamic by hitting D on the keyboard. There we go. You can see that that's a nice sharp edge right there. And now this rounds off on the corners a little bit. That's okay. You don't really need that to be sharp. If you do, you can go ahead and increase that too, but nothing wrong with that. And then we go to geometry, dynamic subdivision, we see that's turned on. We can apply thickness however we want. And then that's going to apply thickness on both sides. Now we do want to be careful when we apply thickness that we don't warp it too much. So we're just going to increase just a little bit. Yeah, 0.01 or whatever. Now, if that sharpness is too thick, what we can do is actually increase the, we can increase, go to crease level, and we can drop that down to, like, let's say crease of 2 or something like that. And that would help out a little bit. Smooth, this is fine. Yeah, should be fine. So now we have something that we can utilize really well. And you can again, you can make this as crazy as you want. The other way you could do it, instead of using creases, for those who don't like creasing, we can actually go to, let's turn off all the crease. We can just use edge loops to give us better topology and give us a little bit of fall off action. So let's hover over this edge, go to insert, and instead of creasing, we'll go ahead and just add some edge loops to the edges of all the plane changes, which then will give us a little bit of roundness to the model. A little bit of beveling, like natural beveling. That might actually help. If I turn that on, you can see now it's a little bit of a softer transition. We still have some pretty nice soft, sharp edges, but so however you would like to do that, either way is totally fine. I actually might just keep it like this, because why not? Yeah, let's keep it like this. Okay. So now what we'll do is we'll save this and we'll call this basic 3D printing key cutters. There you go. Give us something to start with. And how would this key work? So if we were to go to this guy right here, back him up in time, let's copy him. Let's actually just slap him right in here. So let's just hit paste. Okay. So how this would work is we would take this key, turn the thickness off for a second, and let's say we want to cut his head off. Okay. I'm actually going to move this in the direction that I would want. Say something like this. Okay. I'm going to angle this like such. So I have this plane that's kind of sticking in his head. Now this is a little bit big, so let's scale this down. And let's reposition it. Now, if we want to make sure that the cutting section of this is big enough, again, we're just going to come in here and we'll mask off the centerpiece. Say something like this. And then just scale that up so that way it's enough. Okay? And then from here, we'll just turn on dynamic. Open that thickness a bit. And then we'll set this underneath to cut. So now we have set that to cut before with live boolean it off. And then we go ahead and turn live boolean on. And now we can see that the key is cutting perfectly fine. Let's make sure that we go to geometry, dynamic subdivision, and apply the setting. This is very important. If you don't apply it, what will happen is it will still make a cut, but it's going to make a cut on a single plane. And that may not be big enough to fit. So we're going to go ahead and just hit apply. So now that the thickness is legitimate. And we'll put this in a folder. So that way we don't have to worry about anything else. And we'll call this folder test cut loop. And now we're going to come in here in Boolean folder. Now you could boolean with subdivision, but it's up to you, however you want to do that. I just recommend, I've had errors if you don't apply the dynamic subdivision. That's what this boolean with dsdiv stands for, dynamic subdivision. You can do that method. I just would rather apply it myself. It's up to you. Either way should work out fine. But go ahead and boolean in that folder. And then you'll get to, if your cut is clean, you'll get both the head and the body separate. So you can see here, looks like we've cut. We'll go ahead and go to polygroups, go auto groups. And if you get two different auto groups, this was before, this is after auto groups. Now we have a head, and we have where the head will go. All split. This is the easiest way to cut and prep for 3D print. If you don't really care about seam lines, this is probably the fastest way you'll do it. And then all you'd have to do is go up to here and split hidden. So now you have a head with a key that fits perfectly with the body where the key got cut out. And then of course too, you can always flip normals, turn on transparency, select the other tool, and you can see the spacing between the two. Which we had that set up here on this key in particular. If we were to take this one and we were to go ahead and split hidden, you can see here this one was set up to have a lot of space in between. So if we were to cut one to the other, it would have a lot of space. You do want a good amount of space down in this area because you got to make room for glue. So when you want to, when you want it to stick in there, if the glue will expand. If it's really, really tight, butt up against each other, it might fit okay, but as soon as you add the glue and it starts to dry, it might push it up. So you want to be careful about that. So having space in your female side of your key cut will help you a lot. So that's why it's important to come in here and kind of check to see, make sure there's at least a little bit of room. This is a perfect amount of room. Where this one was a little bit, this was like a little bit overkill. In fact, what we can do is we can just take this guy. We can come up here and scale this up a little bit. Something like that. So it's not so much. There we go. We'll delete this example. And that's how you would end up doing it. In fact, here I made a mistake. Let's delete this one here. Take this, merge it down. Copy, put it in here, paste. That makes sense. And what we can do is I'll go ahead and, like I said, I'm going to go ahead right now and save these out, and then you guys can use these for however you would like. Let's actually scale this down a little bit. Oop, send that home. If I have this one, send that home. Perfect. Home. There we go. Now we have a couple examples. Let's actually insert a cube while we're at it. And we'll actually set that up as the, yeah, that's the 1-inch cube. Beautiful. Let's go ahead and rename it. Perfect. Where are we? Send that home. Take this one. Send this one home. This 1-inch cube that's here, we're going to scale this down a lot. Because that's going to be the new name of the subtool. Basic 3D printing, yep. So this will be, there we go. Yeah, let's do that. scaling this up, prepping these files for you guys. So we have a 1-inch cube. We have a, we'll call this the dynamic plane cutter. And then this one would be more of a custom, a custom fit. Custom fit keys. There we go. So we'll have a dynamic cutter, a 1-inch cube that you can measure anything against, and a custom fit. So you'll use one side to cut and one side to do it. Thank you for the keys for success. I love it. Yeah, not a problem, dude. All right, let's go ahead and save and save. And then so if you're a part of my Discord, real quick, what I will do. Where are we? Bloop. I'm gonna add in under main general topics. I'm gonna add in, we'll call this giveaways. Can I call it giveaways? No, we'll call this free tools. Okay. Great channel. And then here are anyone can use. Can use. Bloop. And I'm going to go ahead and I will upload that file right meow. I have some other stuff that I plan on giving away. So we'll go ahead and we'll upload that. I'll get a link in there as soon as possible. And if you guys would like to be a part of that Discord, absolutely. All you're going to do is go ahead and copy. There we go. Jump right in there. And what I'll do is it's a big file, so let me actually turn around and upload it another way. And it will be there in just a minute. Where are we? What is it? Oh, I'm on the, oh yeah, Firefox. Yeah. Go to Google. Go to Google Drive. I'll come up with a more, like, successful process of uploading stuff. Maybe I'll create like a custom Dropbox or something. But right now, I'll upload it via Google Drive and then drop the link in there for everybody to have and to hold. I'm doing stuff off screen so you guys can't see all my fun stuff. Do I typically use these keys when a mini is really big, or do I use them for small minis too? If I need to use them for keys, yeah, I'll use them for minis if the mini calls for it. And if the mini doesn't call for it, then no need. But yes, typically what I would do is I will utilize them where I need to, because you can scale them however you need to. So let's say, for example, like take a look at this guy. Let's kind of come over here real quick. So he's only 1 inch tall, and you can see what I did was I just created them on the fly really quickly, but I just took this basic shape right here, just used one of them, and I just manipulated it like that. I just manipulated it, added it to here, and my plan is once I'm ready to cut, because it's going to take a while, once I'm ready to cut against this area, you can see I will just end up duplicating him and using him as a cutter, which will cut a perfect spot for him. And it's simple as that. So yes, I use these keys all the time. You'll typically see me only use this style of key when it comes to making 3D print stuff. I don't use square keys. I use tapered keys. I won't use square keys. I don't like round keys because there's too many problems with them in my opinion. I've had too much where I printed something and the straight square was too sharp and I spent a ton of time sanding it down trying to get it to fit. Tapered keys just work. So I never really like question the science on that. Round keys, you could taper a round key, but then it can spin, whereas a tapered square key will fit and then it will lock into position. It won't rotate on you too much, so that's why I don't use round keys. I've created some really elaborate funky keys on a pinch, but I don't recommend using those that often. From gluing minis together, the taper keys are so much easier. Yep, absolutely agree. And you'll see a lot of tapered keys in the professional industry as well. If you're ever prepping something for prototype, a tapered key is your best friend. Okay. So what I'll do for this is I'm going to get a link to share it, and I will make sure that anyone who has the link can go ahead and download this guy. So if you come into my Discord, under general topics, there's free tools, and these will be called the 3D printing key cutter tapered keys. Bloop. There you guys go. You guys can download that as soon as you join. Welcome in. Even if you join me just to download them, have fun, enjoy them. Absolutely. And I'll create a new permanent folder where there'll just be a link to stuff that you can have. It's a great content, Ian. Seriously, more of this knowledge is what I'm looking for. Awesome. Well, yeah, if you guys like this stuff, I love sculpting on here, but I love going through this whole process where I basically run through the entire project all the way through. But yeah, what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna end up finish cutting him in my own personal time because this stuff takes forever. We only prepped technically just this one guy and the base, but we haven't cut anything yet, so I can go over that stuff more next week as well, especially if you guys love this stuff. But yeah, I have seen three-faced pyramid looking keys too. Really interesting. I would love to know more about that. I mean, it's just a pyramid at that point. Essentially, it would work. That seems a little bit elaborate, but if it works, it works. I never argue with anything that works. But yeah, and once I'm done with this guy, like I said, I'm just gonna give it away. You guys can download it and have fun. So, but it's gonna take a while to prep this thing correctly. So we'll definitely get to that. Kind of threw a wrench in your gears asking about these keys. No, not at all. Thank you for asking these questions. I really appreciate it because I want to give you guys what you're looking for. You guys can always ask me anything in the middle. I will stop what I'm doing and I will focus on that one thing. So never worry. There's a ton of ways, and I know there's not a lot of information online about how to prep your model, what's the appropriate way, what's not appropriate way, am I doing it right? So definitely we could do more of this for sure. No problem. Are there any final questions before the night is out? Because it is 8 o'clock. This is where I usually end it and go get dinner. If you guys have any final questions, let me know. Hopefully this was helpful segments. So we went over scaling. We went over setting up to basically get our build volume with our printer set up with a 1-inch cube that we then copied something like this guy in, and then we pasted it, make sure that it was actually going to fit the build area, which this fits the build area really nicely. So yay! What did Yoda say when he saw himself in 4K? I have no idea. What did he say? What's for dinner? Casita taco. Funny enough, I was Funny enough, I was thinking about that lately and been wanting to try to make one of those little Doom guy models you find on Doom 2016. on the actual size, so sort of puts me on the right track for it. Nice. Jim D cricket noises. Oh. Classic. All right. All right, guys. Well, thank you guys so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate it. I'm glad I was able to deliver some information that you needed. Thanks for bearing with me. It's a rough start on my end, but I appreciate it, guys. Before I leave, real quick reminder for anybody who's new, don't forget to subscribe and follow and like, because there's tons of artists, not just myself, but tons of artists here with a lot of information. If you're new to ZBrush, this is a great way to get good information. Please hit me up. If you're new to ZBrush and you want to get started, ask me anything. I will answer it as best I can. And also, too, the most important thing that is coming up is ZBrush Summit is happening this year, 2021. It is 100% digital, online, October 23rd to the 26th. If you would like to participate in the ZBrush Sculpt Off, make sure to go to summit.pixologic.com so that you can participate, register as soon as possible. When the theme is announced, we'll tell you. Life is good. But you guys take it easy. Have a great night. I'll see you in the Discord. Grab those cutting tools. If you have any questions, ask away. I'll be glad to answer them as best I can. Anyway, all right. That is it. I'm rambling now. I'm tired. I'm going to go. Thank you guys so much. I appreciate you. Bye, 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 bye.